Joining us now to talk about how to end the water crisis is Gary White and some guy called Matt Damon. They happen to be co-founders of Water.org and WaterEquity. Welcome, gents.
Thank
the
you.
UN just out with a new figure for today. 5.7 billion people may run short of water by 2050. How do you even make a dent in a crisis that large, Matt?
Well, for right now there are over 800 million people who lack access to clean water, and that's their struggle and their plight every single day. And it does feel very overwhelming. But the good news is there are solutions. We just need to engage with the problem. But I mean, for instance, we solved this problem in the West for ourselves 100 years ago. So the idea that still 1 million kids a year are dying from totally preventable water-related illness is insane.
And of course, we'll talk about taking microfinancing into water. But you guys have been doing this for what, 25 years, Water.org. So what changes have you seen so far?
Well, go ahead.
Well, yeah. So I've been doing this since I was an undergraduate at university, and then Matt and I merged our two organizations back in 2009. And the change has been in the sense of, like, how do we see the problem? How do we think of it not as just drilling one more well, but how do we think about solving the crisis? And that's really where the capital markets come in, because what we've been able to discover is that people living in poverty actually pay huge amounts of money for their water. They'll go to water vendors, sometimes spending 25% of their income if they're living in an urban slum, or they'll spend 6 hours a day walking to collect water. So the idea was that people are paying these coping costs in order to overcome their own water crisis. If we can help them get access to a small loan so that they can get the water connection to the utility that they need that might cost $200, or so that they can build the toilet that they want, then they can repay those loans. And that's what we call water credit, and it's working.
Which is exactly what you're doing with WaterEquity now as well. And you're also raising money for a water credit investment fund number 3, which is phenomenal. Matt, what kind of a size are you targeting, and why isn't it easier? You would think people would be throwing money at this.
Yeah, I mean, particularly because this idea of water credit, that Gary's being very humble, he pioneered this idea, and it's essentially taking the concepts that Muhammad Yunus had about microfinance and applying it to the water sector. And from decades of interacting in these communities and observing these communities, Gary realized that people were paying, and they could pay for, and would be able to repay a loan because they were paying daily for water. They just didn't have any savings. So if we could front them the money, then the theory was we were pretty confident they could pay it back. And that's worked out better than we could have ever hoped. These loans pay back between 97 and 99%. And so we know we've proven the concept now. We've reached over 10 million people with this. So we're hoping that's going to start to accelerate investment, because we've just completed one of the we did a fund before this $50 million one at $11 million, and we've just gone through one payout there at 3.6%. So it's the model. There's enough evidence that.
Plus, there are all these mandates these days, from endowments and pension funds and a lot of funds that you have to have SSGA funding. So you would think this would be the perfect opportunity.
Yeah. So what companies are right now involved in all of this?
Well, Stella Artois is involved in a big way philanthropically with us to help us kind of jumpstart this market. And then we have the investors that have followed behind. We have Bank of America came in with a $5 million credit installment for us. The Skoll Foundation, the Hilton Foundation, Overseas Private Investment Corporation. And so we have a lot of people, as well as high net worth individuals, because what they understand is they can come in with $1 million into this fund, and they can get a 3.5% return on it annually. But in the meantime, that $1 million helps us get 100,000 people access to water or sanitation, and then they get their money back at the end of the line.
And it doesn't hurt that you have celebrity star power helping with this philanthropic cause.
Well, Matt seeded it. No, Matt put the first million. Yeah, Matt put the first million into the fund.
It's no. When we need institutional capital, I send in the robo nerd.
Right, exactly.
The guy with the 3 engineering degrees, and they don't want to talk to the dropout, movie guy.
I don't know if that's true, but I will ask about politics, because you have to deal with all these regimes around the world, a lot of different types of governments, a lot of red tape. How do you do that? Have you ever tried to work with a government, or, is this why you're doing it sort of privately? Matt?
Yeah, no, we do. That's a big piece to all of this, and we take these, believe it or not, meetings at places like the Reserve Bank of India, it's an all hands on deck approach. I mean, and it has to be, because the problem is just so massive.
And you've already made a difference in India. I believe that you invested, what, $11 million fund there for projects in India. What has been the result of that? What sort of return also did you get?
Well, you'll go.
Well, with the first year of that investment being deployed in India, it's already reached 225,000 people with access to water and sanitation. And for the first time ever, this type of social investment fund has paid a dividend back to investors. So we did a 3.6% distribution last year to the investors in that fund. So it is meeting that social impact. It's helping corporations that invest and boost their ESG scores. And it's helping millions of people get water with this next fund.
How do you decide how much time to spend on this? Because obviously you've got your other careers, and everybody in Hollywood, I guess, has to pick and choose what they're going to give their time to. Can you bring other people on board? How does that work?
No, for me, it was just, I just made the decision that this was what I was going to focus on with that time in my life, and not spread myself too thin, but really dig in on this, and it differs. I mean, if I go through a spate of work, in my day job, then I can't go do a field visit. But when I have the time, then then we'll go out. We try to get out into one of the countries where we're working together once a year, and sometimes we can do more than that, and sometimes we don't.
Can you give us one story that particularly touched you, Matt?
Yeah, a story I think about a lot, because leaving aside the senseless death, the fact that we're losing 1 million children, a year because of this, because my kids get diarrhea, they miss a day of school. In the developing world, that can be a death sentence. And, but leaving that aside, there was a little girl in Haiti who I talked to, who once we put in this water system, she didn't have to do the water collection anymore. And she was spending 4 hours a day after school doing this. And I asked her what she was going to do with all this new time. And she said, I'm going to play. And for a 13-year-old to say, I mean, it just was one of these things. And my oldest was 13 at that point. And did
you say you can't play, you have to go and do your schoolwork? Well,
the joke was, I had said, are you going to have more time for homework? And she said, I don't need more time for that. I'm the smartest kid in my class. So. It's all these incalculable ways in which this affects people, right? It undergirds all these issues of education and health, but really it's about unlocking the potential of somebody. If they have access to water, if a little girl has that access and then she can go to school, she can expect to live up to her potential.
All right, well, everybody, check it out. The videos on the website are amazing. And of course, there are documentaries out there too featuring Matt Damon. Not that that would be a reason to watch. It's really for the actual involvement and the SSGA investing as well. Our thanks to Matt Damon and to Gary White of Water.org and WaterEquity co-founders there.